Thank you for joining us for CBN NewsWatch. I'm Ephraim Graham. Ahead today, the FBI now publicly acknowledging a wave of attacks against crisis pregnancy centers and other pro-life groups. We'll have more coming up. Plus, he fought to protect our homeland. Now this U.S. Army beret is in Ukraine to spread the gospel.
I'm not here representing the United States military. I'm not here representing my command. I'm not here representing the National Guard. I'm representing as an ambassador of Jesus Christ, and that's exactly what I'm doing here as a missionary in Ukraine.
We'll have more on his story coming up. Then later, see the top 5 trending stories in the world of uplifting entertainment, including recording artist CeCE WINANS offering words of comfort to those mourning the loss of 3 UVA football players.
I pray that all of us would understand the beauty of life and that we would make the decision to accept Jesus as our Savior.
All these stories and more coming up next from the CBN Newsroom.
This is CBN NewsWatch.
And we begin this half hour with the FBI publicly acknowledging a wave of attacks against crisis pregnancy centers and other pro-life groups. After months of relative silence, they're now defending its record. Heather Sells has more on our top story.
Since June's Supreme Court decision overturning abortion, government powers in Washington have faced criticism for a lack of interest, much less action, following attacks against more than 60 pro-life organizations. Now the FBI director is speaking directly to it.
So we take it very seriously. And again,
at a Senate hearing, Director Christopher Wray defended his agency, responding to concerns the Justice Department, which oversees the FBI, has become partisan.
It appears that DOJ have become politicized with regard to pro-life things.
I firmly believe that the FBI is going about its work and doing the right thing in the right way.
Wray also condemned the widespread attacks on crisis pregnancy centers and other pro-life groups.
And I don't care whether you're motivated by pro-life views or pro-choice views, you don't get to use violence to express it.
For months, the FBI has kept a low profile regarding investigations into the attacks that include vandalism, threats, and fire bombings.
What's been so striking to us is the non-response.
Religious freedom advocates have warned the silence could encourage more violence. That pressure, plus outcry from pro-life groups, may have motivated Wray to speak. Some pro-life leaders, like Reverend Jim Harden, are not buying the FBI director's timing.
There's disingenuousness here, and it comes after the midterm elections.
In June, suspects firebombed Harden's crisis pregnancy center in Buffalo, New York. The FBI released surveillance video from the Buffalo attack and offered a $25,000 reward for information in the case. Harden considers it a pittance.
It's naive to think that the largest law enforcement agency on the globe, with the best forensic technology known to man, does not know who's perpetrating these crimes.
The FBI has neither offered any other rewards nor information on suspects or arrests in any of the other cases, leading to frustration and ongoing safety concerns among crisis pregnancy centers nationwide. The FBI's ability to make arrests could help to ensure the safety of these centers and assure the public that it's not partial towards one side or the other. Heather Sells, CBN News.
President Joe Biden's plan to forgive student loans will remain on hold for now. That was the decision of the Supreme Court yesterday. The justices declined to lift an injunction currently blocking the debt relief program. Instead, it will stay in place until the High Court takes up a case over its legality in February of 2023. President Biden's plan would cancel up to $20,000 in debt for millions of people who took out student loans. Challengers say the program is unconstitutional. After a string of protests in China sparked by outrage over COVID lockdowns, the Chinese Communist Party seems to be listening to its people and easing its zero COVID policy. But the government is also using the power of surveillance technology to squash dissent. Brody Carter is on this story.
While Beijing has relieved some of the pressure that's driving the nationwide protest movement in China, its surveillance state continues gathering information on those who stood up to the government's lockdowns.
And I cannot underscore this enough, how much bravery it requires for Chinese people to take to the streets.
This week's protests are being called the biggest wave of civil disobedience since the 1989 Tiananmen protests.
At the same time, they want to relieve the pressure that's driving these protests that really could spin out of control.
Wednesday, the government announced it's easing some COVID-19 restrictions where traffic and indoor dining resumed and shopping malls reopened. But during the protests, the surveillance state was keeping a close eye on potential dissidents.
The Chinese Communist Party is notorious for using technology to expedite its undermining of freedom and human rights in China.
The Chinese government seeks to identify the protesters even as video of the demonstrations spread throughout the country.
The gathering of information is continued by Beijing, but you're right, the leaking of these sort of Telegram and Instagram and WeChat kind of videos are spreading, and therefore information is permeating China. And I think this is why it's a threat to the CCP.
One particular application that would mark activities as suspicious that were as innocuous as exiting out your back door rather than your front door. Those types of suspicions could be grounds for being sent to these political re-education camps.
China's communist government has long prepared for protest by building up its security forces. Now the government is even stronger with the new power of its surveillance and censorship technology. Brody Carter, CBN News.
Turkey is reportedly preparing for a ground invasion in northeast Syria. As Chris Mitchell reports, this could threaten the lives of millions of Syrians and the emergence of a new Middle East democracy.
For weeks, Turkey has been shelling towns and villages in northeast Syria. Zani and Çınar Bakır live on the border in the strategic Syrian town of Kobani.
Exactly in 19 November, the bombing began. The bombing was very strong. We were very scared.
It was really devastating in northeast Syria with over 28 people killed, 14 of those civilians. They've hit schools, they've hit hospitals, they've hit grain silos, an IDP camp, water facilities, oil facilities. So really all the important infrastructure for civilians has been destroyed. It's unbelievable that it's been so terrible.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan blames Syrian defense forces for a recent bombing in Istanbul and is using it to justify the military campaign.
We've been on top of the terrorists for the past few days with our planes, artillery, and drones. Know that as soon as possible, we will root out all of them together with our tanks, soldiers, and our friends who walk and will walk this road with us.
Dave Eubank of the Free Burma Rangers is among those on the front line.
It sounds like that was a pretext for this new onslaught into northeast Syria. So we saw all this happening, and then behind that came the threat of a land invasion. As they said, clean out the enemy, clean out the Kurds.
Mayenza says given this geopolitical crisis, the U.S. could play a key role.
Of course, Turkey is important because of the NATO alliance and what's going on in the Ukraine. So this is a really delicate situation for the U.S. government, but nevertheless, they have the tools to push back an invasion, and they should.
The possible invasion puts a growing, vibrant new democracy at risk. It's known as the Autonomous Administration of Northeast Syria.
It's remarkable. They've created this society that respects one another, even with deep ideological differences. And I think that's super important to understand. This isn't a secular society. They're very religious, but they accept one another. They really live among each other with this remarkable religious freedom culture.
The Syrian Defense Forces is backed by the U.S. and serves as the young democracy's military arm. 900 U.S. soldiers work alongside the SDF.
But our presence keeps Turks from completely invading, Iranians from attacking. It holds Assad back a little bit and helps keep ISIS tamped down. So the U.S. has a very important role diplomatically with the surrounding countries, especially Turkey, to find compromises between the SDF and the Turks, which I think is possible.
Mayenza sees the devastating consequences coming from any Turkish invasion.
We know if Turkey invades Kobani, they're going to decimate the people, torture, kill, rape, and commit atrocities, especially targeting the vibrant group of religious converts there.
Meanwhile, as Christmas approaches, Zani and Çınar in Kobani are holding on to hope and their faith.
We just save ourselves in God's hands. So we, like another people here, hug their children and cry and pray. God, we just need the peace here.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And you can see more news from the Middle East with Chris and his team on the CBN News Channel this evening at 8:30 Eastern. You can also find it on the CBN News app. Coming up, he served our country as an elite Special Forces Green Beret. Now he's serving in Ukraine. See what he's doing right after the break. Welcome back to CBN NewsWatch. Millions of American warriors fought in the global war on terror, battling terrorists abroad to protect our homeland. Today, some of them are standing with the people of Ukraine to defend their homes against Russia's aggression. Chuck Holton introduces us to one U.S. Army Green Beret who is now in Ukraine, but he's not there to fight. He's there to spread the gospel.
Sergeant First Class Christian Hickey is a former Marine who went on to join the Army as an elite Special Forces Green Beret. When war broke out in Ukraine, Hickey felt he had to do something, but fighting wasn't part of his calling.
I wasn't called here to fight. I wasn't called here to shed any blood. I was just called here to tell people about blood that was shed for them a long time ago.
That calling led to concern from his superiors over a U.S. National Guardsman working in Ukraine. Nevertheless, God opened the doors for him to go.
I'm not here representing the United States military. I'm not here representing my command. I'm not here representing the National Guard. I'm representing as an ambassador of Jesus Christ, and that's exactly what I'm doing here as a missionary in Ukraine.
After he arrived, he found the Ukrainian troops in desperate need.
These guys don't have medics. They have like one medic per like a line of like over 100 or 150 people on the line.
Tactical combat casualty care happens to be one of Christian's specialties.
I stepped into their training facility, and they saw me, and they knew exactly, like, this guy is different. And they ran up to me and said, "Can you help us? Can you help us?" You know, 7 months ago, they were bakers, they were bus drivers, they were lawyers. Just giving them the skills to be able to stabilize their brothers, to help them get them to a higher level of care. That's mostly what I like to deal with, is, hey, here's how you save your brother's life, or here's how to stay alive if you find yourself injured.
And the time he's spent with these men on the front lines has given him a deep appreciation for the hardships they face. It's a different kind of war than he was used to.
They're absolute heroes. I don't think people understand what these Ukrainian soldiers are actually going through. It's the most terrifying and scariest thing I've ever dealt with on the front line. When you cannot see in front of you because they don't have the equipment to be able to do that. And then you have a Russian drone above you who just has freedom of movement to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and to direct their fires right on top of you.
As the war grinds on, Hickey's mission is evolving to meet the need. Just days after the fall of Kherson, with the population running out of food, Hickey and his team brought a convoy of aid to the rescue.
We're switching gears a little bit. This winter is going to be absolutely tough for the Ukrainian people. There are going to be elderly folks who I love and I respect who are going to die because they're froze to death inside their home. That's what we're going to be here to take them out. I'm going to deliver them firewood. I'm going to deliver them food all throughout the winter.
We want to basically be the hands and feet of Jesus. There's a very, very strong, powerful NGOs bought all this food, and they don't have the action arm to actually deliver it. We'll take the food, and we'll make sure it gets to the right people at the right place at the right time.
Reaching the villages around Kherson is especially dangerous since the area is still littered with Russian minefields. So the people are all the more grateful when Hickey and his team risk it all to get to them. But there's one thing these villagers need more than food.
Lord, I pray that you protect these people. They need every day. From the food, the water, electricity.
We want to give the food hand with a Bible and pray. So we just don't want to give food. We actually want to give Jesus, and that food gives us the access and placement to have a conversation about Jesus.
And they're eager to show how the Russians brought death and destruction.
This building behind me is a school at a little village that we're in right outside of Kherson. The Russians only left here about 7 days ago, and the people in this village say that they didn't leave all at once, and they didn't tell anybody where they were going. Instead, they just sort of slunk away in the middle of the night. And now all that's left are these holes where the Russians parked their tanks right next to this school.
Since I've been here, I've done more long lines of Green Beret stuff than I have ever done in my military career, which is basically, I'm not carrying a gun, I'm not out here to shed any blood, but I'm out here working with the populace, working alongside them, providing them skills they need, providing them food, providing them water, and help build them up.
From Kherson, I'm Chuck Holton, for CBN News.
Still ahead, we've got a look at the top 5 trending stories in the world of uplifting entertainment. Stay with us. You're watching CBN NewsWatch. We'll be right back. Recording artist CeCE WINANS sends words of comfort to those mourning the loss of 3 University of Virginia football players. And acting legend Sidney Poitier is honored with an Icon Award. Those are just 2 of the 5 big uplifting entertainment stories in the headlines this week. At number 5.
I pray that all of us would understand the beauty of life and that we would make the decision to accept Jesus as our Savior, so that whenever the time comes for us to leave here, young or old, that we're ready.
Words of comfort from recording artist CeCE WINANS to the campus of the University of Virginia. Still mourning the loss of football players Devin Chandler, Lavelle Davis Jr., and Deshaun Perry, who were shot and killed. WINANS also shared a song at the memorial service to celebrate the lives of the murdered students.
From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God.
At number 4.
We got 2 shows tonight, regular and extra crispy.
Comedian Jay Leno cracking jokes as he returned to the stage Sunday for a sold-out show, 2 weeks after being severely burned by a gasoline fire in his garage.
I got burned. I was in the hospital for a few days, and now I'm back out working again.
His doctors are pleased with his progress.
Be driving that car again anytime soon? Which one? The one that you had the accident underneath.
Oh, yeah. Sorry to do anything wrong.
At number 3.
It is my great pleasure to present this year's Icon Tribute to the family of Sidney Poitier.
Actor Jonathan Majors led this week's honor of acting legend Sidney Poitier, presenting his daughters with the Icon Award from the Gotham Film and Media Institute Monday evening, and unveiling a plan to continue the work of the actor who died earlier this year at age 94.
Tonight, I am thrilled to announce the Gotham Sidney Poitier Initiative, an ambitious set of programs developed around the spirit Sidney Poitier brought to the world as he broke down the barriers in the film industry in the minds of the audiences. Go ahead. Oh, Sidney.
At number 2.
It's snowing! Oh my gosh, it's snowing!
It's your first look at Dolly Parton's Mountain Magic Christmas special.
NBC wanted a special, and I wanted to give them one. I said, let's do this at Dollywood, because we've got the best singers, we've got the best bands, we've got the best dancers.
It's a movie musical about the making of a network TV special, now streaming to NBC platforms.
I am always trying in my own way to try to lift people up and lighten the load a little bit if I can. And that was one of the reasons that I really wanted to do this show at this time.
At number 1.
We're to sing Dragon Day. We're coming.
It's a Studio 5 first look at the Wing Feather Saga, the largest crowd-funded animated series based on the best-selling fantasy book series by Andrew Peterson. If you could encapsulate the story real quick in just one sentence, how would you describe it?
3 kids discover that they are at the center of a mystery, and they must survive it. And by doing so, they might save the world.
Oh, I love it. As you're writing that, I see as you're saying.
We talk so much about the elevator pitch,
yes.
You know? And like, it's almost impossible if you were the author to give an elevator pitch, because I'm like, if I could give an elevator pitch, I wouldn't have had to write 4 books.
What are the rules when you're in town? Stick together, be polite. When things are mad, stay out of sight.
Season 1 streams free online and the Angel app December 2nd. We caught up with the author and animator Chris Wall at the series celebration in Nashville. What was casting the voices like? What was that process like? I got to speak to Kevin already.
It was really hard because when you read aloud, you make your own voices, or you hear it in your head, or you've heard an audiobook of him reading it, and it's delightful. And so then you've got to hear other actors bring it to life, and you have these preconceived notions that you kind of have to set aside and find what that new version is.
Tink, you can't just run off.
Rumor is, Black Carriage took 3 children last month.
When you ran off, I had to leave Lily alone. Lily? Lily?
Coming out, we've got your Friday Faithfuls. Stay with us. Time now for your Friday Faithful. I'd like to pass along this thought as we wrap this week together. God orchestrates entrances and new beginnings, but He also designs exits and endings. And those often unwanted endings and exits always come before those long-desired new beginnings and entrances. Trust God. He's a God who opens doors for you to enter, just as well as opening doors for you to exit. That is going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. I want to remind you, you can always find more of our programs on the CBN News Channel at any time, as well as online at cbnnews.com. We'd love to know what you think about the stories you've seen here today. You can email us. The address, newswatch@cbn.com, right there at the bottom of the screen. Have a wonderful weekend, a fabulous Friday. We'll see you here on Monday.